How long have I been a Freemason? I joined in 1990 right here in DeMoss 220 in Butler, Kentucky. I took my entered apprentice degree here in June. There was no air conditioning in this building at that time. And I was knelt at that altar and the sweat was running down my back. I was scared to death. I had no idea what they were doing to me. And the guy who was instructing me owned that feed store right on the corner of York Road and 25. His first name was Dan. I cannot remember his last name, but we'd go over and sit on a sack of feed, and it was mouth to ear. He was instructing me, and he worked on the railroad. He got his shift changed, and he couldn't instruct me anymore. So Bradford Lodge, where I got a waiver of jurisdiction from, they had a class of 8 going through. So they sent me up there to study with them, and we studied and got proficient on our EA degree. And there was a fellow up there who stopped me. He belonged to both DeMoss and Bradford, and he said it was illegal for me to get a waiver of jurisdiction from one lodge and take a degree at another lodge and then go back and take instruction. So they stopped me and let the rest of my class go on without me, and it made me mad, so I quit. And I was quit for 23 years. But I knew deep down someday I would come back and finish up. Bill Stanball was a Kenton County policeman, and he was a member of this lodge here in DeMoss. And every time I'd see him, he'd say, "When you gonna finish up? When you gonna finish up?" So I was in Florida one year, and this ring that I wear all the time belonged to a good friend of mine who had passed away. And another friend of mine bought it at the estate sale, and she came over there and she says, "I'm going to sell you that ring." So I said, "I don't know if I can afford that ring or not." But it was Gene Sizemore's ring, and I knew if Gene Sizemore had it, it had some value to it. He was a well-known businessman and wasn't hurting for money by any means. So she sold me the ring down there, and she said, "Don't pay me till you get back home. You might need your money here in Florida." So I had the ring probably 8 or 10 years, I don't know. And gold got real high, so I took it over to Florence one day and throwed it up on the counter. The guy weighed it up. I gave $250 for the ring, and he said, "Well, you got $365 worth of gold there." And I said, "I'll sell it, but I want to keep the diamond. I want to have me a solitaire ring made out of that diamond." He said, "Why don't you keep the ring and wear it?" I said, "Well, I haven't finished my degrees up in the Masons." He threw the ring back up on the counter and said, "Finish up your degrees and wear that ring. It's too good to tear up." Looking back, he was probably a Mason, but I didn't know that at that time. So we went to Florida again. I told Tammy when we came home, "I'm going to finish up my degree." She said, "So whatever you want to do." So I went to Crittenden Lodge. They had a boy who had just taken his EA degree. So I just had to pay my dues up for a year and that year. And Barry Turner, I believe was his name. We took our fellowcraft degree at Crittenden Lodge, and Lewis Fields instructed us. We got proficient on that, and we had an outdoor degree down on Herschel Freeman's farm, and this was in 2013. And I was raised down there on Herschel Freeman's farm, and came back to this lodge here in DeMoss, and I've been very active since. I've been master here 3 times. Secretary, I got put into the secretary. Wilson Wilder was our Grand Master, and our secretary here hadn't showed up, so he came. They didn't go to Grand Lodge, didn't go to education meeting, didn't go to the district meeting, so he came here. He said, "Who's your newest member?" And they pointed at me. He said, "You're the secretary." And that's a joke between me and Wilson Wilder now. He says, "I'm surprised you even talked to me." So I sat in the secretary's chair a couple of years, and then they wanted me to move around the chairs and get into the master seat. I actually sat in the senior warden's chair at another lodge so that I could qualify to sit in the east here. And I've sat there 3 times since, and so far so good. The lodge is still operating. And I guess that's about how long I've been a Mason. What influenced me to become a Freemason? My uncle passed away in 1972, I believe it was. And he was down at Allison Rose Funeral Home in Covington, laid out there, and my mom took us down there. We were small. and that room was filled with guys with aprons on. There were 75 at least, all around the walls, and I couldn't get anybody to tell me what them guys were doing with them aprons on. So that definitely intrigued my curiosity. I didn't know what to think about them guys, but they did that Masonic funeral, and it was awesome just to get to hear that. So my dad was born and raised in Alabama. He has two half brothers down there that were Masons and Shriners, and he bought an old '59 Chev station wagon, and we were going to Alabama down the old road then, and that's back when 65 part of it was a toll road. So my youngest brother's in the back end of that station wagon. And on the front of this station wagon had a license plate F and AM. I couldn't get anybody to tell me what that was. I didn't know what that stood for. So my youngest brother's in the back end of that station wagon, and he's giving everybody blow, them truckers blow your horn. So they're blowing the horn. And my mom says, "What's all them old trucks doing blowing that horn?" My dad says, "I don't know, but it's got something to do with that license plate on the front of here." He said, "That's all secrets." Well, that made it 10 times worse. I'm going to find out about them secrets. But I never could get anybody to tell me. I worked at Kenton County School Bus Garage, mechanicing on school buses. And my boss came in there one day, and he had a Masonic ring on. I said, "Are you a Mason?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, what have I got to do to join them?" He said, "You just did it." I said, "Well, what did I do?" He wouldn't tell me. He said, "I'll send somebody to talk to you." So he sent Paul Holden to talk to me, and Paul's wife was a monitor on school bus. I'd known Paul 40 years, I guess. I had no idea he was a Mason. Just so turned out, Paul belonged to this lodge, the same place where Bill Stanball belonged to the lodge, the same place where my boss belonged to the lodge. And that's why I got the waiver of jurisdiction to come from Bradford Lodge to DeMoss Lodge. What other appendant bodies do I belong to? I belong to the Syrian Shrine in Cincinnati. I also belong to the Scottish Rite in Covington. I'm not active with the Scottish Rite. I am very active in the Shrine. I am actually getting in line to run for potentate. That's a 5-year progressive line. You start out as Oriental Guide, you move to High Priest and Prophet, Assistant Rabband, Chief Rabband, and then the potentate. And each year you're elected to the next chair up. But this year, December the 4th, I'll take a chair. Hopefully, they seem to think I will. The past potentates think that I will. And they're experiencing the same thing as Masonry, a decline in numbers. You have to be a Mason to be a Shriner. And when the numbers go down in Masonry, they go down in the Shrine as well. They've recently raised the dues in the Shrine, and we have right now, I think 30% have not caught their dues up. So that means when their dues come due this time, they're going to owe $400. If they didn't pay $200, I doubt seriously that they're going to pay $400. And that's one thing that I have pledged to the guys, that we will come back across the river into Kentucky. The Shriners, our lodges in Kentucky is where we're going to have to draw from for the Shrine to keep this temple open. And every time we come over here to do a parade or something, I hear people, "We haven't seen the Shriner in years. Shriners, they haven't been here. How come?" We're doing car shows now, riding our drift trikes into car shows and stuff too. I want the Shrine visibly seen in northern Kentucky. How did I get involved with the Shrine? I actually retired in 2008, and I was doing some catering on the side, and that catering business just boomed. It took off, and a guy called me. I didn't know him. He had been somewhere and ate someplace I had catered. His name was Rob Smith, and he was becoming the potentate of the Syrian Shrine, and wanted me to do his reception dinner when he was after he was elected in, his installation dinner. So I did his installation dinner, and that has got me a lot of work at the Shrine. I've catered a bunch over there, still doing catering there. And Rob told me, he says, "When you join the Shrine, you got to join a club. What club you going to join?" I said, "I want one of them little motorized cars." And he said, "Join the Oriental Band." I said, "I can't play no music." He said, "You don't have to." I said, "Well, what do you play?" He said, "We play Shriner music." Well, I'd never heard Shriner music till I joined the Oriental Band, knowing that I was going to hate it. But I actually had a ball in the Oriental Band. I still belong to the Oriental Band, although I have a drift trike now that I ride in the parades. But I'll always stay with the Oriental Band. It's a lot of fun fun that you can't even imagine when you see a guy on a jingle stick over shaking it and blinking his eyes every time. The faces these guys make. When the Shriners come into town in a parade and that band is playing, I don't know how many people that I have heard, thank you guys for what you do. When they see this band coming in, they're laughing, they're smiling. Our costumes are goofy looking, but it gets the job done. How was my experience as Grand Assistant Tyler? I had, like I said, I've been master of this lodge for 3 times. I'd been picked to be district deputy under Gary Rose, one of our very knowledgeable past Grand Masters. And when I was district deputy, I was traveling to all of my lodges. I had to make each lodge twice visit. And that particular year, I sat in lodge 63 times. And Darren Wilson was running for Grand Junior Warden at that time. Wherever they go, they can't announce it. So if I was in the lodge where he was, I would announce it for him. And became very good friends with Darren and his wife, Brenda. And out of the clear blue sky, I was at a district meeting, and he asked me, how would you like to be my Grand Assistant Tyler? I had no idea. I had no idea that he was going to ask me to do anything. So I told him it'd be quite an honor to do that. So I said, who can I tell? He said, tell your wife and don't tell anybody else, because if we tell them now, it looks like we're trying to push the others out. So it was almost a year that I was busting to tell somebody. And finally one day I asked him, can I tell? He said, tell whoever you want. And I got a letter in the mail. I actually posted it on Facebook. And what an honor that it was to get that. And you get a gold collar to wear and an apron. And I traveled with him to 28 of the district meetings in the state of Kentucky alone. I put 6,000 miles on my pickup truck just going to district meetings this year. All in the year, I put 10,000 miles on my truck, and I didn't do a fraction of what the Grand Line does. So you can imagine how much driving they do. I stayed out of town a lot. We would have to go on Friday day and get a room and stay Friday night and Saturday night and come back home on Sunday morning, or sometimes we were out till 3, 4 in the morning getting home. But just across the state, I met so many good people, so many guys that you just can't imagine. We've got some young Masons in the state that are coming up, and one of the guys is Chris Carver. We're going to hear about him down the road. We will hear about this boy. He was everywhere I was, and I just saw him at Grand Lodge last week. He got married, and his wife came to Grand Lodge to have supper with him. And she had to drive all the way back down to Paducah or wherever it is that they were from. But this boy, he's very knowledgeable in masonry, and he's willing to learn. He's always around. We'll definitely hear out of him down the road somewhere. And had I not had that position, I would have never got to meet him probably. How supportive is Tammy? She has backed me on everything I've done. In masonry as well as the shrine. Like I said, she traveled with me to every district meeting but maybe 2. And one of the district deputies traveled with me at that time, Chuck Black, out of District 18. He went to a couple of them with me where Tammy would stay home, but we would go and get a room and stay. And if they didn't have a ladies program, she'd just hang out somewhere, do something, whatever. She has gone to lodge meetings with me. Last year we were down in London at Christmas time. She got out and walked the town. They had all Christmas lights, Christmas music, and what have you. And she got out and walked the town down there, saw all the Christmas sights and caroling and what have you while we were in lodge meeting. And she'd been very supportive. What do I most enjoy about Freemasonry? Probably Cameron Poe summed that up better than anybody I ever heard. I was sitting in the east here, and he was in this lodge, and he said, fellows, when we're in this room and them doors are shut and this lodge is open, we're in our own world. The outside doesn't know what we're doing. This is ours. This is our place here. And when there's peace and harmony, there's nothing better than to sit in lodge with a group of guys that you get along with, that you know. They're all of the same caliber of you. They're all supposed to be in here for the same thing as you are. You know they didn't just rob a bank, or you know they don't have drugs on them. You know they didn't just rape somebody or something. Just a group of good men. And had you never knocked on that door, you never would have met them. If I could change one thing about Freemasonry, what would I change? I would definitely have harder proceedings to get through that west gate. I think that we should guard our west gate a whole lot closer. I know there's guys been taken in who should not be in here. When I was district deputy, the last thing I said when I spoke at every lodge was guard that west gate. If you let a fellow through that door and you know him not to be up to the standard that he should be to qualify to be a good Mason, and somebody down the road sees him 3 years from now on a float at Christmas time, they're going to say, is that what you've got in there? I don't want any part of it. So definitely, if I could change anything, we would have some way, I don't know the answer to it, some way to scale our guys better, or to check our guys out, to really know about them. People who bring a guy in because I know him to be a good man, or just because he's his best friend, that's not always the best for the lodge. The past Grand Master Todd Jones said, is he the type of guy you want to sit in lodge with? I think if everybody asked that question to themselves, we could definitely draw from a better crowd. What led me to join the funeral corps? Probably, like I said, when my uncle passed away and I saw all those guys, I heard them get up there and do their funeral service. Then after I joined the lodge, never really thought about doing a funeral, but after I joined the lodge and we had some guys pass away from DeMoss here, and went to the funerals, and I saw what problems that they're having, struggling with somebody to do the funeral. If you're the master of the lodge, it's your responsibility to do the funeral. And we have a lot of small lodges that couldn't do it, didn't have enough guys to go do it, so they formed the Northern Kentucky Allied Funeral Corps some years ago. It's been around a while, I don't know how long, but I saw Dave was having a lot of troubles with it. Danny Coleman was a guy who did the master's part, had his knees operated on, and he couldn't stand any longer, and dumped more on to Dave and Ira Brockman. And Ira Brockman was killed in a car wreck suddenly, and it kind of left it down to Dave. And now we have picked up another guy that is helping us. But I try to, anytime that I can be there to help Dave. And I have spoken lodges and told these guys, come and stand there with us. It's moral support. Dave and myself have done funerals by ourselves, and Dave knows the most of the parts. I do the junior warden's part and can help out on the senior warden's part, and I'm still working on learning that for him. But Dave and I have done several funerals, just the two of us. And it's the last thing that we can do for a brother of our lodge. And if it phases out, you know, it's not going to be anymore. So I'm very strong, very believing. Actually, this pin that I'm wearing right now is an acacia pin, and you have to earn that. I've probably got a couple hundred lapel pins. That's the only pin that I've earned, and I wear it. You have to do, I think, 25 speaking parts in the funeral before you get one. And I have done over 150 funerals as of this time right now, and still on the funeral corps, still do funerals. And I just think it's a real important part for us. What did I do to get the lodge started back up here after we had the problem with the secretary and that when I went in the East? I said my three principal officers, the three of us would wear suits and ties. And I had a guy who said he wasn't going to wear a suit and tie. I said, well, you're not going to sit in that chair then. So he put on a suit and tie and later became master of the lodge, and he, again, requested everybody wear suits and ties. The whole lodge, when we come to lodge now, wear suits and ties. I was sitting at Grand Lodge one time, and a guy came up to me and says, I heard you turned the lodge around. I said, no, I didn't. I put some ideas out there, and the guys worked with me and we've got the lodge going up and going on its feet, doing good. And he said, what's the one thing you credit that to? I said, neckties. I had them start dressing up. People notice, people watch. And he says, well, I'm past Grand Master of Mississippi. He said, I've got some ties. I'll send you a tie for you and your two officers, junior warden, senior warden. And he did, and with a tie clip. And we wore them. He was one of the Mississippi Mountain Men who go around and do degree work. We had him here. We all wore his tie at that time. But he says, well, you know, just putting a tie on didn't do it. I said, well, I told everybody in lodge that people pay attention. We went to a funeral one time, and we were in that back room, and all we do is go back there and put our aprons and our gloves on, open lodge, say a prayer, go out and do our stuff. So this guy kept sticking his head in the door back there. We didn't know who he was or what he wanted. So we went out and did our funeral and come back, and we're putting our aprons up, and he sticks his head around that corner again, and I says, can I help you? And he says, we were wondering who you were. He said, we knew you wasn't our family, but we should have knew you were Masons by your black suits. So I came right back to lodge, and I said, guys, you don't think they pay attention? Here's an example. We did another funeral where a fellow was a fellow craft. He asked me, could he stand in line as a fellow craft? I said, absolutely, wear your apron like a fellow craft. So when we left there, my wife says, I don't know what you all do back there in that room, but you need to dress one another. I said, what do you mean? She said, didn't you see Gary's apron? It was all turned up in front. So I came right back to lodge again. Guys, you don't think people pay attention? Here's an incident again. I was in Florida one time and got a call that we were on Facebook at my installation for my first time I went in the East. And a guy from Crittenden Lodge had called another fellow and says, I can't believe everybody in DeMoss is wearing suits. I come right back to lodge again. Guys, here it is. They saw us on Facebook. They pay attention. And I think that's one thing that got us up and going. And people noted that we all dressed when we came to lodge. It's a fraternity of brotherhood. And like I said, we're not better than anybody, but I think we should be held to better standards. What would I want my legacy to be? I would hope that what I am doing, what Freemasonry has taught me, to be a better man. I hope that I represent to somebody to be a better man. I don't think Masons are any better than anybody, but I think that we should be held to a higher standard. If you'll live by the teachings of what the fraternity teaches us to be a better man, it's going to show outside that door, whether you've got that apron, the jewel on or not. Hopefully that it has transformed me from some of the bad that I used to do, and I know, using curse words, I've trimmed that down a lot too since I've been involved with the lodges. I hope that my great-grandkids and great-great-grandkids could be possibly watch this or read something about it and be proud to tell their friends, my grandpa was a Mason. The harmony, peace and harmony, I go back to that all the time. Freemasonry is all about that, and I think the older you get, silence and harmony is a big part of your life, and you enjoy that. When I come to the lodge, I mean, we sit in here and have our meetings and that, and real and truthfully, I leave, I couldn't even tell you what I was thinking about while I was listening to that. It's a place of relaxation, and I would hope that generations down the road follow into it.